and welcome to another edition of our Facebook Live session. My name is Heath Einstein. I am Dean of Admission at Texas Christian University, and we are so excited to have you here with us today. Like we do with all of our programs, we always start with a land acknowledgement. No matter where you are likely on land that was once occupied by Native peoples. And at TCU, we respectfully acknowledge all Native peoples who've lived in this space since time immemorial, and in particular, the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose ancestral homeland our university is located. Well, this is now, I believe, the ninth Facebook Live event we've done in a row this past year. And this particular session I'm very excited about. We are talking about how one's intended major might impact the admission decision. And it is timely because we are in the thick of file review right now. We've got our counts, and I mean literally right now, our admission staff, as we sit here at 6:04 p.m. Central Standard Time on December 1st, we have people who are reading applications. And they'll be doing that probably till 1 or 2 in the morning and then get up and do it again tomorrow. And we're going to be doing that for quite a while. So this is a labor of love. We've had sessions on everything from standardized exams to campus visits to financial aid. We try to vary it. We try to keep it timely. So we think this session's really timely too. We're excited that you have all joined us. I want to say hello to all of you, and it's great that you're putting your names and where you're from in the chat. That's really cool. So hello to Tyler from Stafford, Virginia, and Sean from Houston, and Marshall from Charleston, South Carolina, and Kenya from right here in North Texas in Denton, and Patty from San Diego. And there are folks from all over the place, all corners of the country, and even internationally. And that is a really wonderful reflection of our student body here at TCU. So just a few housekeeping items before we jump in. As you know, if you have joined us in the past, this is an unscripted event. We don't. I have just a few notes that I want to talk about, but then really I'm here to get to your questions. So whatever questions you have, please let me know. I want you to throw them in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. Again, I'll talk for a few minutes, but really this is about you and what you would like to know. We have this scheduled to go for as much as an hour. If it lasts 30 minutes or 40 minutes, that's okay. Whatever we can get to, we will get to. I want to thank a couple of folks whom you cannot see right now, but they are working feverishly behind the scenes to make sure that this happens. Rob Berline, who works in our Office of Alumni Relations at TCU, and Liz Rainwater, who works here in the Office of Admission. They're making sure that everything goes off without a hitch. So thank you very much to Rob and to Liz. Okay, I do want to give you some information about where we are in our admission process right now. As I mentioned, we're reading right now, and we are close to sending out a first batch of decisions. So I know that there are already questions that are being asked, like, when are those decision letters going to go out? I can see that Haley asked that question on Instagram. When are the early action letters going to be released? So let's start with early decision, actually, because the first group of decisions that we're going to get out will be this Friday, just 2 days from now, in about 48 hours. Those students who applied early decision as first-year students will be notified of those decisions. So that's very exciting. And if you're not familiar with that term, early decision means the students who have opted to choose under a binding application, meaning if they are admitted to TCU, that they definitely are going to enroll. For students who have applied early action, so Haley, this answers your question, we are going to release those decisions in about 2 weeks, 2 weeks or so. It's just a matter of, can we get through reading all of the files? We always get through our decisions definitely before the holidays, before the Christmas holiday. We want to make sure that you're able to celebrate with your family without the stress of not knowing what the admission decision is. So we will let you know either way here fairly soon. For students who applied, and I see Hannah Rose asked this question, when will I hear back from you all for spring admission? That will depend on if you applied as a first year student or a transfer student. If you are a transfer applicant, you could hear today, there was a batch of transfer decisions that went out today. You might have heard already, or you might hear as we get another batch of decisions out here over the next month. So with our spring transfer applicants, we actually roll those decisions out in batches. For our first year spring applicants, those decisions should be going out on Friday, right alongside our early decision applicants who were applying for next fall. So spring first year students and fall early decision students should be hearing on Friday. So a lot going on right there. Avery asks, what time will ED decisions be released? That you're getting very specific, and I love it. We usually will try to drop the decisions at the tail end of the business day. So that could be 5 o'clock, it could be 5:30. It also depends on just how quickly the system that we use can batch out those. So what I would say is if you're in the central time zone, it's going to be sometime in the early evening. That's sort of when you can be looking for it. Ethan asks, when will early decision two results be out? So early decision two, it's a second round of early decision. It's also binding, but we give students until February 1st to decide if they want to apply under that early decision two round. And those students will hear back in early March. Okay, early March is when our early decision two students will hear from us. Now, why did we decide to add a second round of early decision this year? It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, even though you didn't ask it. But a lot of people want to know that. Two reasons primarily. One is that for many students, they haven't yet had a chance to visit TCU until after the November 1 early decision 1 deadline has passed. And since it's probably a good idea to visit a school before you commit yourself to it, um, we want to give those students a chance still to declare, yes, TCU is my top choice. And so we said, all right, let's give those students a chance. And there's another group of students for whom TCU becomes a first choice, and that is students who applied to another school in an early action or early decision round and found out in December or January that they did not get admitted. And so they may have emotionally invested in another place and been told no. That happens, unfortunately. But now they have a chance to regroup and they've decided, you know what? My number two school is TCU. And since my number one school is now no longer an option, TCU has emerged as my number one choice. And so therefore, I'd like to commit to TCU under that idea, that binding application. So for those two reasons, we have added that second round of early decision. Okay, let's see. Our marketing team promoted tonight by saying you're going to hear some dad jokes. Now, I don't know if that's because I naturally use bad puns or if I was supposed to have something prepared, but it just so happens that my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and one of my kids got, I don't think anyone on the marketing team knew this, they got me this dad jokes, the good, the bad, the terrible. And there are some pretty funny jokes in there. So I'm going to sprinkle them in throughout the evening just to keep this interesting. So here's the first one. Where is the biggest pencil in the world? Where is the biggest pencil in the world? Of course, it's Pennsylvania. How did you not know that? The biggest pencil in the world is Pennsylvania. Okay, next is, let's see, I've got this one. This is really good. I think you're going to appreciate it. Ever since we started quarantining, I've only been able to tell inside jokes. Get it? It's timely. Inside jokes. Okay, I'm going to pause on those. I might come back to it. You might decide you're going to leave the Facebook Live session altogether if I keep going. So I'm going to stop there. Okay, so let's talk about how the major that a student chooses might impact the decision. I'm going to start with our transfer applicants because that's a much more straightforward process. With our transfer students, we want to see that a student has taken at least 12 transferable credits. So that's one semester's worth of courses in a long semester. And what we mean by long semester is either a fall or a spring semester, and have a minimum GPA. And what that minimum GPA is could vary by major. Okay, so for the most part, If a student is applying to TCU as a transfer student and they have at least a 2.7 GPA, and we have space in their program and everything else checks out, there's a really strong chance that the student is going to be admitted. They're going to be very competitive for admission. The admit rate for our transfer students, or I should say, the space that we have at TCU for our transfer students, is typically not nearly as competitive a process when compared to the space that we have for our entering first year students. So 2.7 GPA is the minimum requirement for our transfer applicants. However, there are some majors that would require a slightly higher GPA. If you are thinking about any major in our College of Education and you are thinking about transferring to TCU, you would need at least a 2.75 GPA. If you are interested in applying either to the Neely School of Business or to our strategic communication major in the Bob Schieffer College of Communication, you would need a 3.0 GPA if you're coming from a four-year institution, or a 3.25 GPA if you're coming from a two-year institution. Um, and then finally, if you are looking at one of our pre-health majors, so you're planning to go to medical school, dental school, you're coming in pre-vet, something like that, and you're going to major in biology or biochemistry, or something along those lines, you would need to have a 3.5 GPA, whether you're coming from a two or four-year institution. So the standards are quite a bit higher for students who are going into those fields. Contrast that with the first year process. And when students are seniors in high school, and applying as a first year student to TCU, we take a much more holistic approach to the application review process. So let's just briefly go over that. And if you've been with us before, or if you've attended an information session on campus or at your high school, you probably know this already, but it's worth another review. We look at the entire picture that the student provides for us. There are several required components to the application. First is the student's transcript, and we're considering not just the transcript itself, but how that transcript is built. What are the courses that the student has chosen? What is the school that the student attends? Has the student challenged themselves appropriately if advanced courses are offered at their school? What have the grades been? What is the arc of the grade point average been? In other words, did a student start off a little slowly as they were transitioning from middle school and then build their way up? Or did they start off really strong and then sort of fizzled out over the course of high school? So that trajectory is important to us too. If the student submits test scores, that's part of the assessment of a student's academic preparation as well. Although, as you probably know by now, test scores are not required for admission to TCU. That's an optional component. So that academic preparation is a big piece of the puzzle. We also look at contributions the student makes outside the classroom. We're looking at um, leadership positions the student might have held, depth of experience over the course of 4 years of high school, those sorts of things when it comes to the co-curricular experiences. We also look at, in some cases, and this relates back to the topic of the night, how have those co-curricular experiences linked to, or how are they aligned with one's intended major? Sometimes that can have an impact on the admission decision. The best example of that is nursing, and we'll talk about nursing in a little bit. And then we're looking at letters of recommendation. We require one from a counselor or some other school official completing what we call the school report, which gives insight into how the student fits into the school community. And then we also require a teacher letter from one. Sometimes students will submit more than one, but only one is required. So transcript, letters of recommendation, co-curricular experiences, and then the student's essay. Every student is required to complete an essay, which is also known as a personal statement. And then we have a couple of custom questions that we ask in addition to that essay. We ask what makes TCU a good fit for you as a student, and then in what ways do you plan to contribute to an inclusive college environment? All of those factors are taken into account. We also do consider a student's major. Now, how much is a major considered? Let me take you back several years, because For a long time, when students applied to TCU, we didn't really pay too much attention to the major that a student was selecting. Um, the reason for that is number one, um, we know that at 17 or 18 years old, you don't always know exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life. That's not only perfectly acceptable, it's encouraged. It is not expected that everyone's going to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. Your prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed yet. So it's a rather unfair question. How many times does like your Aunt Susie or Uncle Joe ask you, what are you planning to do with the rest of your life? It's a pretty unfair question, actually, to a 17-year-old. So there's that. Um, and sort of related to that is our curriculum is designed to allow students to change majors. That is totally acceptable at TCU. The way we have set up our curriculum, with the requirement of completing the core curriculum, no matter which academic unit within TCU you're a part of, really does encourage students to explore all of the disciplines. And so, for those reasons, we didn't really think too much about it. However, where a student starts in the TCU academic ecosystem actually does matter from a planning purpose. We need to make sure that we have enough faculty to support you. We need to make sure that we have enough academic advisors to support you. We need to make sure that we have appropriate classroom space to support you. And so if we have an academic program where in one year we have 100 students coming in, and in the next year, all of a sudden we've got 300 students coming in, that's a problem from a planning standpoint for the university. And so, therefore, we do have to keep in mind what students are thinking about when they're applying to TCU. Now, for the most part, it's not going to make a huge difference. Um, it's not typically much harder to get into one program over the other. The way the numbers play out, because of history, you don't typically see these wild swings from our applicant pool. You can see here that the admit rate by college is fairly constant. Okay, with it ranging um, on the low end, the Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences, that's the outlier here. You see an admit rate of 27.6% last year. This is for the fall 21 entering class, so current first year students at TCU. If we take out Harris College for a moment, we see a swing that is less than 10% from bottom to top, or top to bottom, however you're looking at it. With School of Interdisciplinary Studies at 61.2%, down to the College of Science and Engineering at 51.9%. Okay, so that's not really too different. Now, the Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences at 27.6%, that is driven entirely by the nursing major. There are several other majors within Harris College, and you would see if we were to break that out further, that those other majors, like movement science, for example, that would be more on par with what we see at the rest of the university. Okay, so why is nursing the outlier? Why is it so much harder to get into the nursing program? We have a really good nursing program, and if you've applied for it, you know that to be true. Um, but we are limited in the number of spaces that we have because we offer students the tremendous experience of having of doing their clinical rotation, which is just a fancy way of saying internship. That is part of the program. It's built in. That starts second semester sophomore year at TCU. Okay, we are limited by those clinical rotation spots that we have with our area partners in the medical community here in Fort Worth. Um, if we had more space for those clinical experiences, then we would offer more space. We might expand the opportunities for nursing students. So even as we see nursing shortages throughout the country, and we certainly as a nation need to educate more nurses, we also don't want to harm the integrity of our program and over enroll in nursing and not be able to guarantee those clinical rotation spots. So that's the one where it very much does matter. And if you have applied for nursing, you know that there's actually a supplemental application. There's some extra questions we ask to students who apply for nursing. We want to know what kinds of experiences you have had, or what inspired you to become a nurse, and what kind of educational experiences, in addition to any co-curricular experiences you may have had. So now, I think one immediate question that comes to mind when people hear this is, uh, well, I can just sort of backdoor it, right? I'll apply to something else, get into TCU, and then I'll just transfer to nursing. Doesn't quite work that easily. Yes, you can transfer within the university. And if you're in good academic standing, typically it's not very difficult to go from one college to another or one major to another. And again, that's because we know that you haven't necessarily decided what you want to do forever. Um, Nursing is a little bit different because if you don't come in immediately through the Office of Admissions process and you transfer later, you are necessarily adding an extra semester to the end of your experience because it is a lockstep four-year program. So if you're starting later, you are going to finish later. There's really no way around that. So it can be done. You can transfer into the nursing program, but it's just going to add some time. Now let's talk about just changing majors in general. If in the application process you want to change your major, you can actually log into the portal and you can select a new major. Okay, let's say you want to go to ballet, and then you're going to see a pop-up that has a special message for you because dance is a little bit different. There's a secondary application process. Okay, and you'd have to complete an audition. So let's say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do dance. I think I'll do health and fitness, which is also in the Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences. You click submit. This is found in the student portal, and you're going to see the submit is in your major change request is being processed, and then you'll see when you log back into the portal. And in most cases, you'll be put into your major. Okay, and if you're not, it's probably because you're applying to one of those specialized fields, and you'll see a pop-up. So it's very easy to do. You can do that as you're applying. You can go into the portal after you've been admitted to TCU and make a major change request there. Again, depending on the major, that request may or may not be accommodated, but we will certainly do our best to do that. Now, there was a question that came up. Olivia just asked, how common is it to be deferred from nursing? This is a really good question. I'm going to answer it by first talking about the defer in general. So if a student applies early decision, that's the binding application, we are going to give you one of two decisions. We are either going to admit you or deny you. And the reason for that is you have invested so much emotionally, we feel duty bound to give you a final answer. And if it's not going to happen in the early decision round, our feeling is it's not going to happen later on. And there's no sense sort of kicking the can down the road. Better to sort of rip the Band-Aid off, let you know the decision, and allow you to then explore other opportunities. With students who apply early action, there is the option of being admitted or being denied, and there's a third option that's being deferred. And that's our way of saying, we're not really sure yet what decision we want to make. We need to understand what the rest of the applicant pool looks like, and we need to see what your first semester of senior year looks like. So we're going to defer your application to the next round, that regular decision round. There will be students who are applying for nursing who will be deferred. Actually, a lot of students, because we don't have space. We're going to give you that option, actually, and we're going to encourage you then to think about another major. Okay, so as you're filling out the defer accept form, we're going to prompt you to think about that another major that you might consider, because it's our way of saying it's going to be really tough to get into nursing at TCU. But there are many students who have applied to nursing knowing that that's what they think they want to do, but you know what? They really want to be at TCU. Whether it's nursing or not, they definitely want to come to TCU. And we want to give you that option to then say, okay, if nursing's not going to be it, I'm going to change my major. I'm going to major in graphic design, or I'm going to major in movement science, or I'm going to major in religion or physics or whatever it is. And you can go ahead and make that request. One other thing about nursing as it relates to early applicants, and this is specific to the early decision students. Every year we have wonderful nursing applicants who don't quite make the cut for the nursing major, but we think would be fantastic at TCU otherwise. And remember, just a couple of minutes ago, I said with early decision students, you either get an admit or deny decision. If we think you're a great student, but maybe not great for nursing, we will actually reach out to you. And we've done this actually in the last week. We have a handful of students who fell into this category. We've already reached out to you to say, we don't think it's going to happen for nursing, but we want to give you an option now before we say no to TCU. Would you like us to change you to a different major? And then we'll review you for that. Still with a binding early decision if you'd like, or we'll release you from that and you can change to early action. So that's any student, and they're not a lot of them. They're usually 15 to 20 students who fall into that category. But we think they could be great fits for TCU anyway. Okay. Lauren asks, will most admitted nursing students come from early decision? The answer is absolutely not. Because the early decision pool is very small, we don't think it's fair to give away all of those spots, as precious as they are, through our early decision nursing students. What we attempt to do is keep a, a rate that is proportional to the rest of the class. That is, if all of our incoming students, if 20, let's put it this way, if 20% of our incoming students come from early decision, we are aiming to bring in 20% of nursing students through early decision. So it still leaves plenty of space for other students. So this sort of all begs the question, generally speaking, if you're considering major, whether it's a big consideration like nursing or maybe a lesser consideration for some other major, what exactly does that look like? So let me give you some examples. If you're a student who has applied to TCU as a computer science major, and you're an applicant who's only gone through Algebra 2, and you've had no advanced science classes in high school, and you didn't take any computer science, whether it was advanced or not, um, there's a pretty good chance we're not going to admit you because you have not shown the adequate preparation for that program. Now, if you are a 4.0 student, we might admit you in the hopes that you want to end up studying something else. And there may be there may be a natural sort of weed out process that happens. You may take your first computer science class and realize I do not have the preparation for this, and after a week say, you know what, I'm dropping this class and I'm going to change my major to something else. But if you are a borderline student and the major doesn't really align with what your transcript tells us, that could impact the decision. Similarly, if you are an English major or you intend to major in English and we're reading your essay and it's very hard to follow because it appears your writing skills haven't advanced much past ninth grade, then we're going to be hard pressed to admit you into our English program. So in those cases, it very much can make a difference. Now, I want to I want to show you a graphic which demonstrates what does it mean to apply to TCU with a major or without a major? Because some people think, well, I'm at an advantage or a disadvantage one way or the other. And you can see here, for students who applied as an undecided major, and it, by the way, at TCU, we call that pre-major because that sounds much more official than undecided. Undecided sounds flimsy. Pre-major, it's like you've made a choice to be pre-major, okay? You can see the admit rate's 54%. If you've chosen a major, the admit rate's 53%. That was last year, by the way. Um, that's a negligible difference. What that should tell you is it really doesn't matter. There's no advantage one way or the other. By the way, as you look at those admit rates, you may know, because we've talked about this in a previous session, that our first year class at TCU is the biggest that we've ever had. There are 2,560 students in the first year class at TCU. We ended up admitting a bigger number last year than we typically do because we were unsure how that group of students would behave in COVID. Now that we've had a couple of years under our belts of seeing how the students have behaved, I anticipate that our admit rate is going to look a little bit more like what we saw in pre-COVID years. So in most years, our admit rate is somewhere more like between 40 and 50%. So I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think based on the number of applications that we're seeing so far and the number of offers of admission that we are forecasting needing to have in order to bring in our class next fall, I think our first year admission rate is going to be more in line with what we've seen in the past. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I think that graphic still, whether it's 53 and 54% or 43 and 44%, it holds true no matter what year we're talking about. You're not at a disadvantage if you decide that you don't know exactly what you want to study. And as I said before, TCU is really designed for that. And you're going to work really closely with your faculty and with your advisors to make sure that you're on the right path to graduate in 4 years. Okay, I've already spoken for far too long. I've actually gotten some questions in along the way, so I don't feel too bad about that. Let's take a break for another dad joke because I did promise you some of that. And I think the first couple were really successful. I think you guys all like that. So here's the next one. Um, this requires some knowledge of history and economics. So see if you can follow me on this one. Why did Stalin? Why did Joseph Stalin write in lowercase? Because he hated capitalism. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good dad joke. That's a dad joke, not for like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, but more like a high school student. So I hope you appreciated that. Okay, here's another one. Um, I told my dad a joke recently about electricity, and he said it was so funny it hurts. And so that's for me because with the last name Einstein, you know we got physics going through our family. So okay, I'm going to stop now because this is really bad. This is going off the rails really quickly. Okay, let's get to your questions. So um, Jessica asks, are decisions released via email? Um, Sorry if you said that earlier. I actually didn't say. So the answer is we will send an email to you to let you know that the decision is ready for you to view in the portal. Okay, so there will be an email that is sent out that will prompt you to log into the portal, and at that point, you can it will be, you'll see what the decision is. So yes, you can look for a message from us. Okay. Heather asks, if I didn't put test scores, will it decrease my chances? No, Heather, that's a great news. We had a session several months ago on test scores, on standardized test scores, and if you look on YouTube, you can find it. And we went through exactly what the numbers look like. Not only did test scores not impact a student's likelihood of admission, but uh, there are plenty of scholarships to be had for students who don't submit test scores also. So I think that's really exciting. Okay, Brooke asks, can you change your application decision once it has already been submitted? I think when you're asking that question, what I think you're asking, and you can tell me if I'm wrong in the chat, that whether you want to do like early action or early decision. At this point, you can't change because our early decision letters are going out in just a couple of days. So we're basically done with that process. Um, it, if you want to change from regular decision to early decision round 2, because we have not yet hit the February 1st deadline, you absolutely can do that. You should be able to do that in the portal as well, just like you could change your major. Okay. Um, Linnea asked, could early decision and early action applicants be placed on a waiting list? And if so, when would those come out? So as I mentioned, the early decision students will just be admitted or not admitted. Early action students will not be put on a wait list; they'll be deferred. And the difference between those two is if you are deferred, you are being put into the pool with the regular decision students, and you will find out when the regular decision students find out. The wait list is reserved for students who have applied regular decision, and we don't feel like we've got space for them because we've already gone out with as many offers as we can. But we're going to put them on a waiting list in case space opens up. And typically, that we will, if we are going to make offers to students from the waitlist, that will happen sometime either in April or just after the May 1 candidate reply deadline, depending on the year, depending on what our needs are. There are some years where we offer students, we offer admission to nobody off the waitlist. There are some years we offer very few spots. There are some years where we offer a couple of hundred student spots off of the waitlist and into TCU. That can happen again either before or after May 1st. Okay. Um, let's see. Marshall asks, what are the most popular majors for incoming freshmen? So this is a really good question because I've told you how competitive nursing is, and I mentioned with the transfer process, it can make a difference with business and pre-health. Um, And I think those are really good examples. Business in particular, biology, those are two of the most popular majors, which doesn't mean it's necessarily harder to get into. And you could see from the graphic we threw up before that, yes, it's a little harder to get into science and engineering than it is to some other programs, but not appreciably. So Marshall, to answer your question, um, yes, the popular majors tend to be business. That's the most popular. Um, Psychology, biology, um, and then in every year, pre-major. Remember that undecided one is always in our top 5 most popular majors. Okay, so I would say don't worry about what the popular majors are, because often if they're popular in terms of applications, it means they're popular in terms of enrolled students, and we've got a lot of space, we've got a lot of faculty in that area. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Um, the, if a student, Elizabeth asks, if a student does not get accepted into a fine arts program that requires an audition, will that affect them getting into the school? And the answer is, like many answers in college admissions, it depends. It depends on which fine arts program we're talking about. So I'll give you an example. With theater, if you're applying for the BFA program in theater, whether it's straight theater or musical theater, and you are not admitted to the program, we might very well admit you to the university in hopes that you will enroll in the BA program. Because with theater, we offer both a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a Bachelor of Arts program, and we need to fill classes with both of those students. So it's possible we still might admit you to the university. The other piece to this is that the audition process for our fine arts applicants is very much a plus factor, meaning if you are a strong student, you might get in whether you had a strong audition or not. If you are a student who's sort of borderline, like for example, the average GPA of students admitted to the university in one of our non-compressed majors is 3.66. Okay, so that's basically like an A minus, B plus, A minus average. Um, if you've got a 3.1 GPA and you've had an awesome audition, and the program says to us, we really think this student is going to be highly successful in our program, then you might very well be admitted, even if your GPA is a little bit lower than what we typically see. So that's what I mean by being a plus factor. If, on the other hand, your audition is unsuccessful and the program is not interested in you, then it's less likely that you're going to be admitted. So when I say it depends, it means there are other factors that are considered, but the audition is a big piece to the ultimate decision that that we are that will ultimately be made here. Okay, Melinda asks, what is the average GPA for nursing major applicants for fall 2022? Melinda, I don't have that number at my disposal. It is a great question. What I can tell you though from last year is the average GPA of a student admitted to nursing was 3.86, and that's an unweighted GPA. So that's mostly A's. There could be a few B's scattered in there, but it is mostly A's. It is a highly competitive program. I think I saw a stat recently that the admit rate last year for nursing was, I want to say, a little over 20%. There have been years where it's been as low as like 14%. So it is a highly competitive program, um, but uh, but it's a great program, and we're of course very excited about it. Okay, Susanna asks, when they tell you if you have been admitted into TCU, do they tell you how much you get of scholarship, or is it a process after the acceptance? Awesome question, Susanna. The answer is yes. You will know immediately if you've been awarded an academic scholarship. So those range all the way up to full tuition with our Chancellor Scholarship. The Chancellor Scholarship is separate. That's a separate process. So if you're going to be awarded the Chancellor Scholarship, that you won't find out of the offer of admission. The maximum award you would find out with the offer of admission is our Dean's Scholarship. That's $25,000 a year, which is about half tuition. So that's a pretty substantial scholarship. That's the max you'd find out at that time, and then there are other levels Students will find that out with their offer of admission. That is separate from need-based financial aid. Okay. So if you are hoping to achieve a need-based financial aid package that would allow you to be supported in coming to TCU financially, and you have applied for financial aid by the time you applied um, for admission, then you actually will find out your financial aid package usually within a couple of weeks of the offer of admission. Now we have winter break in there, so it's going to probably be about a month, up to a month before you hear about your financial aid award. Um, but the academic scholarship you're going to find out about right away. So hopefully that will be good, and it'll be right in the portal awaiting you with your offer of admission. Okay, Katie asks, can you address pre-med versus nursing? So one can be a pre-med student with any major at TCU. Technically speaking, pre-med is a track, not a major. What we have found typically, because students who want to go to medical school will need a certain number of and a certain type of uh, natural science courses, typically students who pursue that track within our Pre-Health Professions Institute will major in one of the following four areas: um, biochemistry, biology, chemistry, and neuroscience. Those are the four majors that are typically associated with pre-med. However, one could major in nursing and do pre-med. That does not happen very often because nursing is very much a pre-professional program. It is designed for students who are going into the field of nursing. So that's not common at all. However, in terms of likelihood of admission, you've seen the statistics. Nursing is the hardest program to get into at TCU. But with pre-med, we have a lot of space. We have a lot of interest. And I do find that typically, if we were to break out our applicants by intended major, the students who are applying for those pre-med majors, biology, biochemistry, chemistry, and neuroscience, they tend to have higher academic credentials. So it's not necessarily that by percentage it's harder to get into, but you want to be a strong student so that you're able to stand out in that pool. Okay. Let's see. Heidi asks, can you comment on the application volume for EA and ED? And are you expecting the admit rates shared by department this year? So in terms of application volume, it's a great question. Historically, and what we again have seen this year, is that the bulk of our applications come through that early action round, that non-binding round. Okay. We will usually admit somewhere between 15 and 20% of our incoming first year class through that early decision round. And then I would say the majority of students will end up, because that's where they apply, the majority of students will end up enrolling through that early action round. So to put some numbers on it, we might have in any, and I don't, this is off the top of my head, so don't quote me on the exact number. We might have somewhere between 800 and 1,000 early decision applicants, whereas we might have 13,000 early action applicants, something along those lines. So that'll give you a sense of scale, one pool versus the other. I know that there are many students who are concerned, well, if I don't apply early decision, that's my shot. And otherwise, it's going to be really hard to get into TCU. And the answer is it isn't. We, knowing that the volume of students is so high in that early action round, we're really careful not to over enroll early decision because we want students to be able to have a chance to come to TCU. Okay, Chris asks, does the state that you're applying from factor into the admissions process? Chris, the answer is no, not really. We're looking for the best students we can find. It often surprises students to learn that we have more students, and this has been the case for many years now, we have more students coming to TCU in every first year class from outside the state of Texas and from the state of Texas. It used to be much different. It used to be most of the students came from Texas, but as people have started to learn how amazing this university is and the exposure has grown over the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you have slowly seen this change, and it's very exciting. And it means that TCU has become a much more desirable place to be. So typically, we'll have 55 to 60% of our students coming from outside of Texas, 45 to 40 to 45% from inside the state of Texas. Um, and if we ever move too far one way or the other, I think we'd pay attention a little bit more. But for the most part, we're just looking for the strongest students we can find, and the students who we think are going to be really great matches for TCU. Okay. Um, Riley asks, can you join more than one of the schools? Excellent question, Riley, because yes, you can double major at TCU. You can major and minor. You will have one home college where you start. So, based on the application and the major which you selected during the application process, we will funnel you into the appropriate college within TCU. So, for example, if you are planning to major in women and gender studies, you're going to be initially a student in the School of Interdisciplinary Studies. If you are planning to major in creative writing, you're going to be in the Adran College of Liberal Arts. If you're going to be a journalism major, you're going to be in the Bob Schieffer College of Communication, and so on. But if along the way you decide to add another major, then yes, you're taking classes in multiple schools at one time. Okay, Emma asks, so if your major is more niche, is it any more likely to get accepted? Um, I would say that we want strong students no matter what. Okay, you need to be able to demonstrate that you're going to be a great student in the classroom and a great member of our community, and that you're going to help really create an inclusive community at TCU. Those are things we're looking for. Um, if you are applying to a major that doesn't have a lot of students currently, and where we feel like we have capacity for more students, sure, it's a little bit easier to stand out. But that doesn't mean that if you're unqualified to TCU, that you're necessarily going to get in. So I wouldn't suggest all of a sudden you say to yourself, "Oh, well, I'm going to take my what I plan to do in business, and now I'm going to go into some other major because we have so many business applicants." And then again, try to sort of backdoor it, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get in right away, like I mentioned before with nursing. And really, you want to start in the program that you want to end up pursuing. Okay. Let's see. Kate asks, do I need a strong math science background to be admitted for the environmental science major? Kate, I think especially science, even more so than math, we're going to be looking at what courses you've taken and how you've done in those courses. Doesn't mean, by the way, um, everyone should understand this doesn't mean that you need to be a straight A student in those classes. We understand that not everyone is taking all APs and getting perfect scores in everything. This is a process. This is what education is all about. But yes, we're going to be probably paying more attention to while we look at everything. We're going to be paying a little more attention to how you're doing in your science curriculum to make sure that you're going to be a good match for that program. Okay. Kylea asks, do you find out honors college admission in your TCU admission decision email, or does it come separate? If so, how much longer after your decision? Okay, Kylea, that's a great question. The John V. Roach Honors College application process is happening simultaneously, but the decisions will go out a little bit later. So if you're an early decision or early action candidate, you'll find out your admission decision, as I said, either this week or within the next couple of weeks. If you've also applied to the Honors College, you will not find out till probably late January, if you've been admitted to that college. Okay. Um, if you end up applying to TCU under the early decision 2 or regular decision application plans which have a February 1 deadline, and you're also applying to the John V. Roach Honors College, which has a February 15th deadline, your offer of admission may come at some point in March, and the honors application might be late March, closer to April 1st. Okay, but all in time to make a good to give you plenty of time to make a good decision for yourself. Okay, so we're not going to let you into the honors college on April 30th and say you now have one day to make your decision. That would be pretty unfair and unethical of us. And as part of our mission, we're all about ethical leadership. And so we want to behave in an ethical manner. Okay, Terry Ann asks, how much is weighted GPA considered as it usually reflects rigor of course load? Excellent question. So let me unpack for you a little bit how we go about evaluating the transcript. We actually will strip away any weighting and calculate an internal GPA that is reflective of your academic coursework. Okay. Now you might say, well, that's really unfair because I took a bunch of IB classes or I took dual credit classes. I took all these classes that were really challenging to me. We know that. We see that on your transcript. And the way that factors in is we assign students a strength of curriculum rating. So we will assess the rigor of your transcript as a separate component, and we will combine those. But the reason why we strip away weighting is because every high school weights differently. And so, Terry Ann, you might have a GPA that is a 3.96 because your school gave you a 5 for an AP class as opposed to a 4 for an on level class. Well, somebody else might go to a school where an AP class might only get 4.5 and not 5. And so their weighted GPA might look lower than yours, even if the reality is you both got A's in AP classes. So that's why we strip away the weighting and give everyone a standard 4-point GPA in our process. Okay. Let's see. Patty Smith asks, will fine arts majors not find out if they are admitted to the university until after their audition, even if they have applied early action? Ballet auditions not until January, February. Other universities send acceptance letters to both the university and the dance program. Awesome question. The answer is you might find out about your admission decision before you find out about your audition. If we think you're a perfectly great student for TCU, and we get the sense that you would be very happy to come to TCU even if you didn't get into the program, you might very well be admitted. You might be deferred, and we're going to wait to see what that audition result looks like. And again, part of the calculus is how strong an academic student you are. But because you won't have the program decision in place in time, we wouldn't be able to give you that along with the offer of admission. So the offer of admission very well could come first. Okay. Campbell asks, is it possible to apply regular decision after being rejected from early decision? And the answer is no. If we have denied you early decision, what we in essence are saying is we didn't think you were going to be a strong enough candidate no matter which round you applied to TCU in, and therefore we're going to deny your application and and let you explore other opportunities. There are many students, and this is like the least fun part of our jobs. We want to say yes to everyone. My title is Dean of Admission, not Dean of Denial. I want to admit every student possible. The fact is we don't have space for everybody. So, and this doesn't go just for early decision students. It doesn't matter when you apply. If TCU is your top choice and we are not able to offer you admission, we very much would encourage you to explore the transfer route. We welcome a lot of transfer students to TCU every year. In the fall, we typically have about 450 incoming transfer students. In the spring, we usually have another 150 or so transfer students. Many of those students started as applicants when they were high school seniors. They either were admitted and decided to go someplace else and then realized, you know what, I really should have gone to TCU, or they weren't admitted, wish they had been, were forced to go somewhere else, but never got TCU out of their heart. And so they would reapply again as a transfer student. So no, you can't apply within the same round or the same year, I should say, in a different round, but you can apply to TCU later, and that happens quite a bit. Okay, so Amy says, what if you are a student applying for double major in psychology and theater? So we don't actually admit students as double majors. On your application, you're asked to choose one major. And so whatever that is, that's what you're going to be starting as. You can add a major, even right at orientation. You can add a second major if you know that's what you want to do. I think I heard, and this was some years ago, so it might be different now. I think I heard somewhere along the line that like 10% of students at TCU double major. It might be more than that now, but it's a healthy number. And that number goes up when you consider students who maybe have one major and a minor, or a major and two minors. So it is really easy to sort of cross pollinate, so to speak. Um, okay, we are just about out of time. So I cannot believe how quickly this time went. It was just astounding to me. So let's see. I'm going to end with one more dad joke, and that is, of all of the inventions in the last 100 years, the dry erase board has to be the most remarkable. I'm going to end on that note because you don't want to hear anymore. It's been a pleasure to be with you. We are taking a hiatus next month because we will still be on our. I think it's going to be our first day back on campus, first Wednesday of January. So we're going to come to you again the first Wednesday of January, the first Wednesday of February. That's when we're going to come to you again. We're skipping January. We've had a blast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. frogmail@tcu.edu. You can call us at 817-257-7490. We are always here for you. And we just wish you a great night and best wishes throughout this entire process. Have a great evening, and go Frogs.